Molly Bloom walked into her kitchen, naked and sweaty. Humming something joyfully to herself, she took out a bottle of water from the refrigerator, opened it, and began to drink. She was soon followed by her husband, Leo, also naked and sweating. He hugged her waist, brought his nose to her cheek, and began to enjoy the pleasant vibrations that were transmitted from her buzzing mouth to his face. Molly never noticed it, but she was always unconsciously humming the 30th movement of Bach's Goldberg Variations after a satisfying session between the sheets. Indeed, she continued to hum it long after the physical euphoria had subsided. Molly was obsessed with Bach. She listened to him non-stop almost wherever possible, at home, in the car, or in the office. In her youth, she studied piano for 10 years. There was still an old piano in her parents' house on which she had practiced playing the well-tempered clavier and the Goldberg Variations. But since her marriage, she had had to content herself with just listening. There was no room for a piano in their small apartment. Her lifelong dream was to have a house big enough to fit a grand piano. Leo did not share her passion for late Baroque music. He was more into rock and metal, and he kept his headphones on while enjoying AC/DC and Led Zeppelin. However, he cherished her post-coital purr and her enthusiasm, as she explained to him the story behind each variation. He knew, for example, that the song was based on a famous German children's song. She also explained to him that Bach himself considered it one of the pinnacles of his achievements and immortalized it in his only well-known confirmed portrait of him holding a sheet of music from the famous opening aria. Leo never admitted it, but thanks to Molly, he fell in love with many of the genius's keyboard works. "Do you know how much I love you?" he asked his loving wife, burying his nose in her neck. "Yeah, you just showed me that for over 2 hours," she giggled. "No, really? How did it happen that I have the most beautiful, sexy, smart, and devoted woman in the world?" She cringed a little, turned to him, smiling, wrapped her arms around his neck and said, "I'm asking myself the same question about you, handsome." She then freed herself from his grip, grabbed his hand, and pulled him along with her. "Let's go shower. I need someone to soap up my back." "Only the back?" he asked playfully. "Maybe I can find another use for you." She winked at him and headed to the bathroom, humming her favorite tune again. Later that evening, Molly and Leo were sitting in their small living room, watching the Italian Netflix series Allegiance. Suddenly, Leo heard his wife's quiet sobs, so he took the remote control and stopped the broadcast. "What's wrong, honey?" he asked her with concern in his voice. "It's so sad," she whined. "They grew apart only because of misunderstandings, although they love each other." Well, it wasn't really a misunderstanding. He kind of cheated on her mentally, and she cheated on him physically. They were both to blame for the end of their marriage. "But this could have been avoided," she exclaimed passionately. "I don't understand how. Once she crosses the red line of physical betrayal, there's no going back," he said firmly. "How can you be so cruel? We are all flesh and blood. Even if she was wrong for a short time, he acted irrationally and coldly." Leo looked at her suspiciously and said, "I'm amazed by you. There may be people who are willing to share the love of their life with others, but they do it openly and with the consent of their spouse. They don't scheme behind their backs. Anyway, I'm not one of them. I will never live with getting sloppy seconds. Just the thought of it makes me sick. Not to mention the risk of sexually transmitted diseases and the living nightmare of raising someone else's bastard. I would never spend the rest wasting your life by living with someone who is an unworthy, untrustworthy, disruptive scumbag." Molly's eyes went wide as saucers as she suddenly jumped up from the couch and ran into the bedroom. Leo looked at her in confusion for a moment and then went back to watching the miniseries, which he found very interesting. It was around 3 p.m. the next day when Leo received a strange phone call from his old friend Bob while working. "Hey, Leo, how are you?" "Hey, Bob, how are you doing? Is everything okay?" "Yeah, look, does your wife still drive that ugly green Mini Cooper, or did you sell it?" "She still drives it. Why do you ask?" "I'm on my way to a meeting with a client on Eccles Street, and I just saw a car that looks exactly like hers parked next to a high-end bimmer next to a very large house, and as I don't know many green minutes, I thought that I should call you. Did you see who's driving? No, I was just passing by and had to move on. Okay, thanks, Bob. Let me call her and find out what's going on. Leo ended his call with Bob and dialed Molly's number, but was immediately sent to her voicemail. 10 minutes later, he tried to call her again, but was unsuccessful. He knew that she usually put her phone on airplane mode during work meetings, so he called the secretary at her office and found out that she had left early to run some errands. Later that evening, Leo seemed less calm than usual while having dinner at home with his wife. "Everything is fine?" asked his loving wife. "You look a little worried." "Oh yeah, just tell me, were you in Eccles Street this afternoon?" Leo didn't miss the horrified expression that crossed Molly's face for a moment, or the way her eyes darted up and to the right before she responded. "Yes. Why are you asking?" "Bob happened to be driving by in the area and noticed your car as you were just parked there." "Oh, yeah. My boss's wife had to leave the house urgently, and he asked me to babysit his little daughter for a couple of hours while I still got paid, of course." "Couldn't he have done it himself?" "He had a very important meeting that day that he couldn't miss." "Why not ask one of the secretaries?" "They're all new, and I don't think he trusts them enough." After a pause of a few seconds, Molly continued, "Oh, you should have seen their huge living room and the magnificent Steinway grand piano in the center. I loved playing it so much. I wish one day we could have the luxury of having such an instrument, too." "Maybe someday it will be like that," he said gloomily. Later that evening, as they lay on their bed back to back, both were lost in deep thoughts. Molly thought that she should meet with her boss sometime next week for an in-depth conversation to see how they could get out of the unwanted tangle they had created without burning any bridges. Their married life hung by a thread. She had received 2 promotions in the past 6 months and owed her boss a lot for the promotions and support he had given her, but the situation was getting out of control. It all started when her boss walked into her office one day and heard piano music playing in the background. He asked her if she could play too, or if she was just listening. She replied that she actually played quite well and was close to choosing a career in music. She told him that she hadn't had a chance to play in recent years and that she really missed it. He invited her to come over to his house one day to play his luxurious piano, making up for its lack of use. One Monday afternoon, he stopped by her office on his way home, told her he was leaving early, and invited her to follow him and play at his house for a few hours. This made sense to her at the time when he explained to her that his wife took their daughter to the tennis club on Mondays and Thursdays so that no one would disturb her play. She told herself that playing one of the most prestigious pianos in the world was an opportunity she couldn't miss, so she accepted his invitation. She hadn't been playing for 20 minutes when he appeared with a bottle of wine, 2 glasses, and a big smile on his face. She still didn't understand how she ended up in his bed that day, but she got rid of the guilt by convincing herself that it was a one-time and pointless exercise. After the second time, she told herself that this was important for her career and that playing this beautiful piano would feed her soul. He's not particularly demanding, and it's just a few minutes of uninhibited and emotionless rough sex once or twice a week. No real harm was being done, she assured herself. The fact that he was handsome and well-endowed made her decision easier. "Just a slight change from the usual tender lovemaking with my husband," she told herself. And, in any case, it would all end as soon as we saved enough money for a house, stopped taking the pills, and started a family. Leopold Bloom, who was lying on the other side of the bed, was also having trouble sleeping. Serious doubts troubled his mind. He has been happily married for the past 3 years. He knew for sure that Molly was also happy, but now he was overcome by an ominous feeling. His eyes watered at the memory of the party where he first met her 4 years ago. That memory had been so sweet just a few days ago, but it had turned sour. He did not mention to his wife that the secretary at her workplace did not mention a nanny, but rather errands. He also didn't mention that Bob said he saw her parked next to a luxury car. If her boss and his wife weren't home, who the hell did that car belong to? He thought about it. And why did she suddenly decide a few months ago that from now on it would be sexless Mondays? At the time, her argument that they should give their bodies a rest after a hectic weekend made sense, but now it took on a completely different meaning. She also announced genderless Thursdays 2 months ago, claiming they should give their bodies a rest before the madness of the weekend. 5 days a week was more than enough for him, but now he had serious doubts about her motives. In the dead of night, he decided that he would not have sex with his wife until all his doubts were completely cleared. Over the next few days, everything seemed to return to normal at the Bloom family home. Although Leo gently rejected his wife's late-night advances, citing fatigue, he gave her no real reason to suspect that anything was wrong. It was 3:30 p.m. on a Thursday when Leo told his manager that he needed to leave early. 20 minutes later, he was in Eccles Street. It didn't take him long to find Molly's brightly painted car parked next to a new BMW SUV next to a huge house in an upscale neighborhood. He parked his car on the street, headed straight to the front door, and was about to ring the bell when his heart stopped beating. Through the thick wooden door came the thunderous sounds of the piano, which filled the entire space around him and broke his heart into pieces. He immediately recognized the sounds of the glorious German nursery rhyme that had just become infamous. He turned around, got back into his car, and drove away. When Molly returned home late at night in high spirits, she heard a wonderful sound coming from her apartment. The familiar sounds were in perfect harmony with what she had just hummed. "This will be a wonderful evening," she thought. When she opened the door, she immediately shouted, "Baby, I'm home," and was surprised when no one answered. She started looking for Leo in all rooms of the apartment, but he was not there. Maybe he went to buy something for dinner, she thought. She was very disturbed after her favorite variation came from the home stereo system. The music ended and immediately started playing again, as if the stereo was set to loop. She was looking for the remote control to check the system settings when her eyes caught the shine on the buffet countertop. As she came closer, she saw a wedding ring placed on a small note with a handwritten inscription. "Thank you for saving me from wasting my life with someone who doesn't deserve it. Molly Bloom will never hum Bach's 30th variation again." Molly stood in front of the sideboard in her small family room, staring at the shiny ring on the countertop. Time seemed to almost stop. She felt her aching heart pounding in her temples. Leo left and won't come back. How did he know about this? Or should I ask why he waited so long? Did he see us? Did he look out the window? She fell to her knees, trembling, holding the note he had left for her. Someone unworthy? Those words hurt her like nothing had ever hurt her before. The thin note burned her fingertips. Fire or ice, she didn't know, but either way she couldn't let it go. It can't end like this. He loves me. He will forgive me. He must forgive. We were made for each other. Unreliable, subversive scum. His voice echoed in her head as salty tears streamed down her beautiful face. After a long and liberating cry, she was able to find the strength to stand on her feet. The 30th variation started up for the 100th time, driving her crazy. She tried to check the system settings, failed, and angrily ripped out the power strip. There was finally silence. "But why, Leo? Why exactly the 30th? I hummed it as I walked up the stairs to my apartment. Coincidence? Telepathy? What are the chances? No, it's unlikely. You tried to send me a message?" Suddenly it dawned on her. "I always hum it when I'm happy. I always hum it after." Oh no, he was there. And it was then that music, which had always been associated in her mind with happiness and joy, forever became associated with shame and guilt. "Where are you? What are you doing?" She needed to hear his voice, so she picked up her smartphone and dialed the number. The message went straight to voicemail. She wasn't the only one who knew how to use airplane emoji. Molly left a sincere request for him to call her back, and then took a shower. She skipped dinner because she couldn't eat, and then lay down on her empty bed, lost in thought. Should I call his sister? Maybe call Bob. Has he already told anyone? Would they agree to talk to me if he did? Has he already found someone? He can choose anyone anytime he wants. No sane woman can resist his charms. Are other people's hands caressing his perfect body right now? Is someone kissing his soft lips? I'll kill this bitch. He's mine. Mine. Poor Molly barely slept that night. Leo lay on the bed in his motel room, staring at the ceiling. Unopened cardboard boxes were strewn across the floor. He couldn't sleep. It was the worst day of his life. All his dreams of love and family were shattered. The love of his life turned out to be a completely different person than he thought. A few months ago, he would never have believed that the woman he married would be a selfish, greedy liar, capable of sacrificing her dignity and marriage for the sake of pleasure. How could she do this? Why did she do this? Did she really fall in love with him? Was it because of his money or power? Is she really that shallow? Maybe she was just bored with me. Will I be able to love or trust again? Are all women traitorous bitches? No, I just trusted too much and let love blind me. I've known for some time that something was going on. Why didn't I act sooner? After several hours of torment, he decided that there was no point in dwelling on the past. It doesn't matter why she did it. It is done. This chapter in my life is over and I must move on. She has a couple of months left on rent. After that, she can renew it in her name. She can take all the furniture. I'll buy new things. Perhaps this is all for the better. I have to think positively. Lemonade made from lemons. I can handle it. He eventually fell asleep, convincing himself that the problems facing him could be solved. Early the next morning, after telling his manager that he was having some personal problems, he went to the nearest local clinic and dropped off blood samples for STD testing. If she did this to her boss, God knows who else she did this to, he thought. From the clinic, he went to meet with a family law lawyer he found on the internet. He arrived at the law office shortly before noon, walked up to the front desk, and saw a pretty young secretary talking on the phone with a client. As soon as she noticed Leo, she smiled widely at him and couldn't take her eyes off him. It was obvious that she was shamelessly eyeing him. Her searching gaze and seductive smile made Leo feel uneasy, so he turned away. For the last few years, he had felt protected from the attacks of the fair sex by his wedding ring. Now he felt unprotected and vulnerable. It was a long and tense minute until she finally ended the conversation and turned to him with a smile. "Hello? How can I help you, sir?" "Hello. My name is Leopold Bloom. I have an appointment with Miss Wilson." The secretary stared at her computer screen for a few seconds, then turned to him and asked him to take a seat in the waiting area until he was called. Leo sat down as he was asked, took out his smartphone, and double-checked a few nearby apartments that he had previously marked on the rental app. The best option looked too good to be true. This proposal has just been sent. It was a fully furnished condo in a nice area overlooking the lake. The price the landlord demanded was significantly lower than Leo expected, given the location and specifications. Leo was a little skeptical, but still planned to check it out immediately after meeting with Lawyer Wilson. Staring at the screen of his phone, he felt a strange sensation on his right side. The gaze, he assumed, was burning through him like radiation. Leo turned his head and noticed the secretary's laser gaze fixed on him. As soon as their eyes met, she raised her eyebrows twice in a row. Leo thought she was cute as a button, but too aggressive for his liking. He just ended a long-term relationship with someone with overconfidence. He wasn't going to fall into that hole again. He gave her a fake smile and went back to his phone. Not even a moment passed when a pleasant female voice was heard from his left. "Mr. Bloom?" Leo looked up and saw a slender woman in a business suit approaching him. She can't be older than 40, he thought. "Yes," he answered simply. "I'm Sue Wilson," she said, shaking his hand warmly. "We spoke on the phone earlier. Could you follow me, please?" Leo couldn't help but feel a slight pang of pain and jealousy when he noticed the engagement ring on her finger. He also couldn't help but admire her swaying curves, tightly clad in her black silk skirt, as he followed her to her office. Once in her office, Leo did not waste any time. He immediately gave her a brief overview of the circumstances that had brought him to her, expressing his desire to officially end his marriage as soon as possible. He tried not to miss a single detail that might be relevant to this issue. Sue didn't interrupt him while he was talking and tried to stay focused, although there were times when Leo felt like she was losing focus. Leo finally finished speaking and waited for her response. She looked at him with a strange, long gaze, as if she was looking somewhere past him. She tilted her head, then flinched when he spoke. "Well, Mrs. Wilson, what do you think?" She collected her thought for a while, and finally said, "Please call me Sue. This case should be very easy to handle. You have only been married for 3 years. You have no children or joint property. You don't even have a joint bank account. Besides, you both make about the same income, so alimony is out of the question. Neither of you have much savings. You leave her the furniture along with the contents of the house. The lease is in your name, but she can stay there until the end of the remaining time. Basically, you can consider this a deal. I can file the documents with the court this afternoon, and it will be served tomorrow." Leo was speechless. He didn't expect everything to be so simple. Agreeing to all her terms and conditions, he signed all the forms she laid out for him and gave her an advance payment for her services. He didn't know, but Sue had given him a discount of 20% off the flat rate she usually charged in such cases. As they said goodbye and shook hands on her doorstep, she promised to keep in touch with him, letting him know as soon as anything important happened. He practically had to tear his hand away from hers. "What a nice lady," he thought as he waited for the elevator. "Her handshake is a little strong, but overall I could see myself with someone like her." Leo shook his head, trying to push away the crazy thought. He knew he was in no mood to accurately judge any woman he met. Leo was in his car, heading towards his desired condominium. He turned off airplane mode on his phone and called the homeowner to set up a showing. "I live nearby so I can get there in 15 minutes, said the old man. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Leo replied. Before the call ended, Leo heard a call-waiting tone. He checked the number. It was Molly. Leo ignored the annoying beep for a moment, but admitted to himself that sooner or later he would have to face her. He decided to answer. "Yes? Oh, Leo, baby, finally. I've been trying to call you all day. I've been so worried. Where are you? Are you okay? Look, we need to talk. I know you're mad right now, but I need you so much." Say, anticipating that this would be followed by endless, incoherent chatter, all in an obnoxiously high-pitched voice that was already coming from the car speakers, Leo decided to turn the volume down to 0, enjoying the blessed silence. After about 2 minutes, he turned up the volume again. Leo, are you here? So, what do you say we meet for dinner around 7? "No," was his decisive answer. "Please, baby, we can't do this over the phone. There's so much going on here. I can't meet you because, frankly, I'm not sure if I can control myself. Oh, please, baby. I'm so sorry, you have to believe me. If you'll just let me explain that I—" "No!" he barked, trying unsuccessfully to lower his voice. "Just the sound of your voice makes me sick. I'm only going to say this once, so I need you to pay attention. I've discovered that you are a petty, selfish, lying snake who has abandoned all the values that matter to me for our own pleasure. We really have nothing to talk about. Baby, I know you're hurting, but this is beyond any pain." He interrupted her again. "You humiliated me for months, constantly lying to my face. I really don't want to see you or hear about you anymore. Why do I have to listen to more excuses and lies? Why should I give you the honor of explaining myself when you don't? Showed me no respect. What's the point of delving into fresh wounds?" Molly was amazed. "I've decided to move on," he said, "and I suggest you do the same. You're a beautiful young woman. Men would be lining up for you. It's probably been that way all along. Let's just move on and live your own life before any more damage is done." "Please, baby, don't say that. I don't want to threaten you, but if you don't fucking leave me alone, I'll have to come after you and destroy you. I really don't want to do that, so please, from now on, any communication between us will only be done through attorneys. Do not contact me, not even by email or text message. This is the last time you will hear from me. Goodbye, Molly." With these words, he ended the conversation. Molly still had the phone pressed to her ear, even though the call had ended. She was very embarrassed. In her short life, there weren't many situations she couldn't handle, or people she couldn't manipulate. Of course, he's hurt, but he wouldn't do anything to hurt me, would he? Ignoring his clear instructions and threats, she immediately called him back. She received no answer. She tried again, but found that he had blocked her number. She reluctantly decided to give him a day or two to cool down. He would come to his senses eventually, she assured herself. He must. Leo parked his car in the designated parking lot underneath the apartment building. He walked out and was immediately struck by how clean and well-kept everything looked. There was greenery everywhere, and he noticed several young joggers in a nearby park. It was a much nicer area than the one he had lived in before. He smiled as he walked up the stairs to the second floor. The sight of the old man who greeted him at the entrance surprised him. He sounded old on the phone, but Leo didn't expect to see a man who was over 80. The old man introduced himself as John. He seemed to Leo to be a stern and businesslike man, a man who had seen and experienced enough in life to not waste any more time on nonsense, and with whom no one should mess with. While giving Leo a tour, he explained that the previous tenants, a young couple, had to leave urgently due to some family problems in their hometown. The condo was in excellent condition, fully furnished and equipped with all the latest electronics. The couple even left behind kitchen utensils. "So what do you say, young man? Are you interested?" "Yes," Leo said dryly, trying not to sound too enthusiastic. "How old are you?" 27. "Are you divorced?" John asked. When his attentive eyes noticed the untainted area left by the ring on Leo's finger. "In progress. Do you want to talk about it?" "She cheated on me," Leo replied bitterly. John thought for a moment, then said, "I grew up here. I spent my entire childhood in this area until I got married and built my own house. My parents continued to live here until they passed away, and they bequeathed it to me. We know that I can demand much more for this place, but it is important to me that whoever receives it not only keeps it, but also earns the right to live in it." Leo nodded in understanding. "What are your plans? Getting married again and starting a family? Career? Second priority. What is your biggest dream?" Leo was silent for a few seconds, seriously considering the question. He wasn't surprised by his answer, but he was surprised by how emotional he suddenly became. "To be the best father a man can be," he said with tears in his eyes. "The father I never had." The old man studied Leo's face for a moment, then took a folded piece of paper from his shirt pocket, spread it on the kitchen table, put a pen on it, and said, "Fill in all the blanks and sign. I'll come by tomorrow evening to pick up the deposit check and 6 checks in a row. For the whole year. I don't force anyone to live here," he said, placing a pair of keys on the table. "If for some reason you don't want to live here, just let me know. A lot of people would jump at this deal." "Yes, sir. Thank you," a stunned Leo managed to say before the strange old man walked out the door and left. Leo stood staring blankly at the door, trying to comprehend what had just happened. It must be karma, working overtime to correct Molly's actions, he decided. However, he didn't have much time to think about it. He had to get his things from the motel and check out. On his way back from the motel, he stopped to buy bedding, blankets, towels, and groceries. He also joined a nearby gym. It took him about 4 hours to get comfortable in the new place. After a quick bite, he went to the park for a run. Before he met Molly, he ran at least 4 times a week and went to the gym at least 3 times. Since he got married, Molly has taken up all his free time. He decided to get back into as many good habits as possible. He was dizzy from the number of hollows he saw on the treadmill. Almost every girl who passed by sent him an inviting smile, and he rewarded them with a comprehensive scan of every prominent part of their toned bodies. 2 days before, he avoided prolonged eye contact with the fairer sex. He knew how women looked at him, and he was not going to risk his marriage for the sake of insipid pleasures. His loyalty had been absolute, but now that he was freed from the shackles of love and marriage, a new ocean of opportunity opened up before him, and he intended to make the most of it. Who said there is no cure for a broken heart? Molly was just about to leave her office Wednesday afternoon when a woman in a baseball cap handed her a brown envelope. She almost fainted on the spot. She didn't even know how she managed to get home without hitting all the cars parked on her street sideways, since she could hardly see anything through her tears. Once at home, she tried to contact Leo, but she was still blocked on every possible platform, including social networks. Bob refused to talk to her, and Leo's sister burst into a series of curses that would have embarrassed a sailor. Little by little, her pain turned into disappointment, which later turned into rage and disgust. She had only one means of communication left at her disposal, and she intended to take full advantage of it. Over the course of a long hour, she formulated, polished, and honed the message that would change her life. In the end, she sent it off with great satisfaction that soon gave way to panic. Leo had just returned home from the gym when his smartphone rang. He was already used to ignoring texts and voicemails from unknown numbers, but this time it was different. The phone showed 4 new letters and continued to beep every time a new letter arrived. First, he had to block Molly's email address to stop the flow. Then he looked at her most recent emails. They were all short apologies begging him to ignore the first message since she was angry, upset, and unstable after being served earlier that day. She insisted that she didn't really mean anything she wrote. Leo's curiosity got the better of him, and he opened that first message. "Listen, you weakling. I received your divorce papers today. You're a coward. Hiding behind a lawyer, running away like a child, instead of having the courage to face me like a man and tell me you're going to get me quit. Since you are not courageous enough to hear the truth in person, I had to send this message to the hole where you are hiding. You're just a child. A weak and unhappy child, and I'm tired of being a surrogate mother for you. If you were a real man, I wouldn't have to look for someone to satisfy my needs. Yes, I cheated on you because you're a boring, clingy, predictable loser. I never wanted to make love to you. I wanted to be had rough, to be used, to feel alive, to feel like every part of my body and soul was touched and lit. And when I say every place, I mean every place, including the ones you refused to touch because you were too pure and sensitive. You created a perfect image of me and treated me like a fragile princess. So I had to run away from you at least once a week so that I could feel like myself again and not a fragile lollipop. It's a miracle that I didn't get diabetes for the years that I lived with you. I'm glad you ran away. It's you who don't deserve me. It saved me from spending the rest of my life with an effeminate weakling. Yes, I lied to you more than once, because in the real world, people lie to each other. It is a matter of survival. People step on each other on their way to self-realization. This is a world of predators, where naive and weak people like you have the right to exist only as spectators. I've already signed your divorce papers, and tomorrow I'll be dancing all the way to your lawyer's office to file them. You're so miserable that I wouldn't be surprised if in a few weeks you come crawling to me and begging for forgiveness. And maybe I'll forgive you, because the only reason I married you was because of your good genes, and certainly not your pathetic personality. Maybe I'll even agree to have a child with you, provided that he is raised by a real man. Now I am finally free to find myself a true lover who can satisfy my material and mental needs. Goodbye, loser. You will never hear from me again." Leo gritted his teeth and clenched his fists as he finished reading the message. He thought that nothing about her could surprise him anymore, and he was wrong. Even if she was typing it while stressed and in pain, most of the things she wrote seemed honest and thoughtful. A new and unfamiliar sensation crept from the depths of his soul into his mind, dark and dangerous. Some aspects of his personality that were buried deep in the basement of his subconscious now demanded recognition. Leo already knew what he was going to do tomorrow, and God help whoever stood in his way. "No, bitch," he whispered. heading to the shower. "This is not a matter of survival. There are a lot of good people in this world. The only problem is that there are also a lot of people like you in it." Molly sat on the couch in her living room in complete despair. She rocked back and forth in an almost catatonic rhythm, trying to accept what she had just done. If there was any chance of reconciliation in the future, she had just blown it. Because she couldn't bear the pain and loneliness, she called the only person who could help her, the only person who would listen to her. She called Ben, her boss. As soon as he heard her voice, he knew something was terribly wrong. He promised to be there within half an hour. Half an hour later, as he parked his luxury BMW SUV at the curb next to a rundown apartment building, he asked himself whether it was wise to leave his car unattended in such an area. The feeling of disgust intensified as he climbed the damp stairs to the second floor. As soon as he entered her apartment, she fell into his arms, sobbing. It took him almost 20 minutes to calm her down and another 10 to remove her clothes. When he was about to leave, he was determined to help her move to a better place. No decent person should live in such a hellish area, he told himself. Molly felt much better after he left, although she didn't understand how they ended up having sex again. I must somehow loosen his complete control over me, she thought, starting tomorrow. On Thursday afternoon, Ann Robinson, head of human resources, was waiting for a special guest at the office entrance. She usually didn't receive guests so quickly, but her assistant assured her that this one was special. She knew what was going on as soon as she saw the husband of one of her promising young employees enter. All the employees literally stopped working. He was definitely an attention grabber, but Ann was curious as to why he had come. She didn't know Mrs. Bloom very well, but she had known her boss for almost 40 years. They were neighbors and first met in kindergarten. Leo sat in the waiting room, sullen, rather rudely ignoring the worker bees buzzing around him. He knew some of them superficially from working in the company, but this time he did not show his outgoing and pleasant nature. Anne straightened her clothes and hair one last time, then came out and invited Leo into her office. Once behind the closed door, she asked him to sit down and said, "Well, Mr. Bloom, what can I do for you?" "Miss Robinson, are there any guidelines in the company's bylaws regarding intimate relationships between employees?" Anne guessed why he was there, but she was still surprised at how quickly he laid his cards on the table. He's serious, she thought. In general, we discourage fraternization between employees, especially when it comes to direct relationships between a manager and subordinates. But there are no clear guidelines when it comes to time off work. What if this happens during working hours? Then it is malpractice and a serious crime. In reality, it is theft. Workers who engage in private activities while working are stealing their wages from their employer. In that case, I would like to report a couple of thieves who work here. My wife, Mrs. Bloom, and her boss, Mr. White. Anne narrowed her eyes at him, then asked, "Do you have any proof?" "Yeah, actually. They're both at his house right now. And since it's only 3 p.m., I'm guessing they must be at work." Anne looked shocked. She couldn't believe that her colleagues could be so stupid and reckless. "I'm sure there must be a good explanation for this." "Honestly, I doubt it. They've been doing this weekly for the last 6 months. It started on Mondays and then they added Thursdays. If you try to call any of their numbers, you'll be directed to their voicemails." Anne was starting to get nervous. She had a good relationship with her longtime neighbor, Betty White, and knew that she took her daughter to the tennis club on Mondays and Thursdays. This made those days in particular an opportune time for Mr. White to do something he didn't want his wife to know about. "Maybe it's just a one-time thing? Why are you protecting your friend?" Leo attacked her. "Another one? I know you've been neighbors and friends for many years. It's amazing how much information you can get these days through the internet and social media." Anne thought for a moment and then said, "Well, yes. He was a colleague and acquaintance of mine for many years, but I will not defend him if what you say is true." Then she picked up the office phone and dialed a number somewhere. Leo could only hear her part of the conversation, but he assumed she was talking to Mr. White's secretary. "Hey, Ruth, Is Ben here? When did he leave? Did he leave alone? Did he say when they'll be back? They won't be back? Is this the first time they both left in the middle of the day? Don't lie to me. Ruth, this is a very serious matter. Don't risk your job for him. I understand. Okay, don't tell anyone about this conversation, especially Ben. Did I make myself clear? Okay, bye. Anne stood up from the table, grabbed her purse, and headed out. Come with me, please. We need to catch a couple of lovebirds. Anne and Leo were sitting in her company car on Eccles Street, facing the White family home. A green Mini Cooper and a large BMW were parked side by side in front of them. So how are you going to fight them? Leo asked, turning to look at the handsome, middle-aged executive sitting in the driver's seat next to him. At 45, Anne was no longer the bombshell she was 20 years or two pregnancies ago. However, she still remained a feminine treasure for connoisseurs. Leo has always had a soft spot for mature women, but he never dared to act on his desires. Maybe it's time for a change, he thought, looking again at her full and delicate features. He noticed that she didn't have a wedding ring. I'm not going to knock on the door if that's what you're thinking. They still have a right to privacy. We just have to wait for them to come out. Betty and Liz should be arriving soon, so it won't take long. Leo opened the window slightly, hearing the sounds of a piano coming from the large house. It was not the cheerful Variation 30, but the very sad prelude in B-flat minor from the first book. He couldn't help but feel a little sadness for her. After all, they had so many good memories of listening to music together. Anne looked at the profile of the young Adonis sitting next to her, trying to understand what could have made Molly cheat on him. She noticed how his face contorted with sadness and pain as he listened to the melancholic melody coming from the house. It's her game, isn't it? Leo nodded silently, looking out the window. Don't beat yourself up over it. It's not your fault. At least you don't have kids. My Elaine was 15 and my Davy was only 9 when their father ran off with his personal assistant. Leo turned his head in surprise. Welcome to the club. She smiled bitterly. Over time, the pain will subside, but the scars will remain. They both sat in silence for a while. Anne then asked, So, how long have you been suspecting? Since day one, I guess, Leo replied. She had dark marks on her waist and shoulders, marks left by a rough and prolonged grip. I was afraid to ask, knowing that if she had lied, I would have known right away. So I chose not to know. I convinced myself that if I hadn't known, then perhaps this would not have happened. Don't worry, Leo. I can promise you won't be lonely for long. She's only 22, and he'd fit my Elaine like a glove, she suddenly thought. Anne and Leo soon became lost in friendly conversation, forgetting about the circumstances that brought them together. Leo learned that her eldest daughter, Elaine, was pursuing a master's degree in marine biology at a local community college, while her 16-year-old son, Davy, was a sophomore in high school. Anne and Davy lived separately, but Elaine came home every weekend. Leo briefly told her everything that had happened since his friend Bob called him, right up to the strange meeting he had with his current landlord. So, what about you, Anne? He asked playfully. Has there been any Romeo in your life? She was about to answer when the front door of the house opened and Molly came out. Anne jumped out of the car and walked straight towards the unsuspecting Molly. Mrs. Bloom, she called just as Molly was about to get into her car. Molly's eyes widened in surprise when she recognized the HR manager. Yes? Miss Robinson? May I ask what you are doing at your manager's house during working hours? Molly's heart began to pound wildly as she realized that she might be in serious trouble. Oh, he asked me to help with the babysitting, Molly tried. His car is here. Oh yeah, he just arrived to replace me. So if I ring the bell, I'll be greeted by sweet Liz and her father? No, Mrs. White just came and took her to the tennis club. I've been sitting here for almost an hour. No one has come in or out of the house. I come to my office first thing in the morning, Anne said coldly. This doesn't look good on you, young lady. She left the stunned Molly behind and returned to her car. Molly stood there, stunned, but eventually got into her car and drove away. As she passed Anne's car, she looked back and caught the piercing gaze of her future ex-husband. "What about her boss?" Leo hissed through his teeth with suppressed rage, not even looking at Anne. "I will have to notify my superiors. After all, he is a high-ranking executive, but under no circumstances can I imagine him retaining his position. This was not a one-time mistake, but don't feel too sorry for him. He was born with money. He will survive." Both were silent for a moment until Anne said with a devilish grin, "You should have seen her face when I walked up to her. It was priceless." "I did," Leo said, and they both burst out laughing. After their laughter died down, their eyes met, and there was a moment of intense tension between them. If someone were to accidentally walk between them, they would likely be electrocuted. Leo finally broke the silence. "Sorry to be blunt, but I find you very attractive and I really need a distraction right now. Would you like to have sex?" Anne was completely shocked by his impudence and vulgar expressions. She was about to slap him when she heard her own voice whisper, "Yes, definitely, yes." "When?" he asked enthusiastically. Anne blinked at him in shock until she finally came to her senses and shook her head. "Hey, not now. Let me just go home and make sure Davy isn't there and I'll call you." After exchanging numbers, Leo walked out, watched her drive away, and was about to get into his car when a luxury SUV pulled into White's driveway and parked next to the BMW. Mrs. White was about to enter her house with her daughter when a sudden voice from behind made her start. "Mrs. White, can I have a word with you?" Betty instinctively turned and spread her arms, protecting her daughter. Her anxiety eased as soon as she saw the man's face. She recognized him. "What do you want?" "My name is Leo, your husband and my wife." He fell silent, looking warily at 11-year-old Liz. "Honey, why don't you go inside and change your clothes?" Mrs. White said to the young girl. "I'll be there in a minute." As soon as Liz entered the house, Leo continued. "As I said, your husband and my wife—" "Molly Bloom, right?" She interrupted him. "Yes. Do you know about them?" "I had reasons to suspect. I even caught them once, but it was only after the act. She was playing the piano when I came into the house. Ben said he invited her because she really missed playing. When I asked him why the bed was rumpled, he said that her playing made him drowsy and he decided to take a nap." "And you didn't do anything about it?" "Life is hard for some of us, Mr. Bloom. I can't think only of myself." Seeing the disappointment on Leo's face, she added, "Everything is different when you have a child. I have to take care of her well-being first. There are other considerations that I would prefer not to talk about now. This is not the time or place. Listen, I need to get inside. Why don't we go out to lunch this weekend? We have a lot to talk about. Here's my business card. Feel free to call me anytime." Leo took the card and watched as Betty entered the house and closed the door behind her. "What a nice lady," he thought to himself as he answered the phone. It was Anne telling him that the way was clear and that she was waiting for him. Leo was excited as he walked down the street towards Anne's house. This would be the first time in over 4 years that he would be with someone other than Molly. He had some performance anxiety. With Molly, he was always gentle and attentive, although, in his opinion, too energetic. His love for her served as handcuffs. He couldn't be rude to her even if he wanted to. It seemed blasphemous to spank her ass, but now he was finally free to experiment with new ideas and express other aspects of his personality. When he reached the house, the front door mysteriously opened. He couldn't see Anne, who was hiding behind him, avoiding the curious glances of random neighbors. Once he was inside, Anne led him into the kitchen and offered him a glass of wine. He noticed that the bottle was half empty and Anne's glass had already been used. He wondered how much she had drunk before he arrived. "I'm not the only one who's nervous." She refilled her glass and they drank, then exchanged smiles and nervous glances. Suddenly, Leo put down his glass, closed the distance between them, put his right hand on her waist and his left behind her head, and pulled her towards him in a wet and passionate kiss. Anne disappeared into the young man's body, allowing him to taste her and almost swallow her. She couldn't remember the last time she had been so horny or full of lust. After her husband left her, she tried to date, although all the men she found were either gold diggers, rich snobs, or jaded and desperate old men. At some point, she simply resigned herself to her fate and stopped looking. In her wildest dreams, she couldn't believe that she would end up with someone like Leo, even if just for a day. All her pent-up desires and needs were ready to explode. When Leo's hands began to wander under her robe, she had to use all her willpower to break their kiss. She knew that Davy could return home at any minute, and the last thing she wanted was to risk this rare opportunity by traumatizing a teenager with Oedipus syndrome. She grabbed Leo's hand and pulled him along as she walked up the stairs to her bedroom. Once inside, she headed straight for the bed. She was about to climb on top of him when Leo grabbed her arm, pulled her back to his body, and then pushed her against the wall. She was a little worried when her back hit the wall, but when she saw Leo's lust-filled eyes narrow and focus on her, all her fears disappeared. He opened her robe and pulled it apart, enjoying what he saw. He caressed her entire body. Breathing heavily, Anne desperately tried to unbutton his trousers and sighed with relief when she finally succeeded. They made love passionately and loudly. "Mother?" a young female voice called from below. Stunned, Anne lowered her head and bit Leo's shoulder in a desperate attempt to stifle a scream. "Mom! Are you okay?" Elaine's worried voice rang out. Frightened, Leo was forced to carefully lower Anne and begin frantically getting dressed. "Yes, honey," she answered in a breathless voice. "I'm just practicing. I'll be down in a minute." Anne straightened her robe, wiped the sweat from her brow, and went downstairs while Leo tucked his shirt into his trousers. "Afternoon exercise?" Elaine asked mischievously, picking up one of the used wine glasses. "I think you've been training naked if you're wearing a robe." "Well, you know," said the blushing mother, "I had to do something about this belly fat." "So you came home early from work and immediately started working out?" Amused, Elaine continued to tease her mother. "Wait, what are you doing here?" "Jill is getting married today. I told you about it last time we spoke. So I decided to come home a day early. Julie will pick me up and bring me back. She never drinks anyway." "Oh, you must be starving, honey. Come on. You should try the mushroom pie I made yesterday. It turned out amazing. I hope Davy left some for us." She placed her hand on her daughter's waist and gently led her into the kitchen. Leo took the hint and began sneaking down the stairs. He was almost touching the doorknob when he heard, "Mom, who is this guy?" "Who is who?" Anne asked, turning around. "Oh, it's a friend. Yes, a friend from work. We work together. And we train together." "Oh, let me introduce Mr. Bloom." Leo stood frozen for a moment with his hand extended to the doorknob when he realized he had to turn around and introduce himself. He hobbled into the kitchen with his shirt half out of his pants, unable to raise his eyes from embarrassment. Finally, he reached the mother and daughter, raising his hand to shake the hand that had already been extended to him when his heart stopped beating. Time and space ceased to exist as Leo stared at the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. A warm cosmic breeze filled his soul as all the pieces of his broken heart were reunited. He and Elaine stood frozen, staring at each other for what seemed like an eternity, until Anne made a few guttural clearing sounds that brought them back to earth. "Nice to meet you, Miss Robinson," Leo said when he was finally able to speak. "Nice to meet you too, Mr. Bloom." "Just Leo, please." "Elaine." After a few more minutes of silence, Anne had to clear her throat again as they held their hands together without shaking. They awkwardly pulled their hands away, and Leo, not knowing what else to say, muttered, "I guess it's time for me to leave. I hope to see you again someday, Elaine." "Yes, Leo, it was nice meeting you. We'd love to see you again." Leo walked towards the door, awkwardly turning his head back, unable to take his eyes off Elaine's angelic face. Once outside, he stood motionless for a long time, trying to comprehend what had just happened. She is real? Am I dreaming? Will I see her again? Has Anne gone crazy? Eventually, he began to walk up the road to his car, almost bouncing like a child. He didn't notice, but he was humming the 30th variation. On Friday afternoon, Leo sat in an Italian restaurant and waited for her to appear. The waiter had just placed a bottle of wine on the table when Leo saw her approaching from afar. Her bright sundress shone from the sunlight coming from behind her. When she entered, Leo stood up and pulled out a chair for her. "Hi, Betty." "Hi, Leo. I'm glad you called. I was looking forward to seeing you again." After exchanging polite words and getting to know each other a little, they finally got to the point. "You probably want to know why I don't kick his traitorous ass to the curb," Betty said, clearly trying to convince herself of the same thing as Leo. "There are several reasons. First of all, he is a good father, and I don't want to deprive Liz of a father's love at this stage of her life. Second, I signed a prenup that wouldn't leave me much in the event of a divorce. I would probably receive generous alimony and child support for a few years, but that would all end when Liz became an adult. Thirdly, Ben has, how can I put it, special desires. I'm not thrilled that he's indulging him with someone else, but I'm thrilled that I don't have to be that person." Leo nodded in understanding, although he didn't agree. "So you're just going to do nothing?" "No. I have my own business that Ben helped me create, and it is doing great. I believe that in 2 to 3 years I will achieve financial independence. By then, Liz will be old enough to go through a divorce. So at the same time, you're sacrificing your happiness." "Oh no, I have every intention of enjoying life as much as possible." Leo tilted his head in confusion. "Didn't you say your apartment was within walking distance?" Betty asked with a lustful smile. Leo smiled back and motioned for the waiter to bring the bill. Later that evening, Leo sat on his balcony enjoying a cold beer, letting the pleasant summer breeze dry his sweaty, bitten, scratched body. Betty had just left him devastated, and he couldn't help but think that this Ben must really be an evil bastard if this banshee thought he was too cool for her. "I probably won't be able to lie on my back for a week." Suddenly, a beautiful image flashed before his eyes. Elaine. Would it be too awkward if I asked Anne for her phone number? While he hesitated, the goddess of fortune intervened and his phone rang. It was Anne. "Hi," he said anxiously. "Hey, Leo, this is Anne. I hope I didn't disturb you." "No, not at all. I was just about to call you myself. Look, I'm not going to beat around the bush. Elaine hasn't stopped talking about you since you left, and I believe the feeling is mutual. She's too shy to call you herself, so I'm sending you her number. Call her, please. She's waiting for your call." "Thanks, Anne. I'll call, but I have to admit, I have some doubts. She's still young and probably not ready to start a family, and I'm also guessing that being a marine biologist, she'd probably be going on long trips." "Research trips. Oh, stop talking anymore. Just invite her to dinner and talk things over." "Okay, I'll call her tomorrow. Look, about yesterday, I want to apologize." "Don't you dare apologize. I had an unforgettable experience that I will cherish until the day I die. I'm almost old enough to be your mother. I never expected anything beyond what we had, but I really expect it to stay between us. Have I made myself clear?" "Yes. Absolutely, Miss Robinson. I'll treasure it too." "Fine. Now enjoy the rest of the evening and we'll see you soon." That night, Leo slept like the dead, on his stomach. Elaine chose a quiet and romantic restaurant for her first date with Leo, and everything went smoothly. They hit it off from the first moment and spent hours talking about everything under the sun. When they had nothing to talk about, they simply looked at each other, holding hands. They lost track of time, and when closing time came, the restaurant staff simply placed the bill on their table. Elaine insisted on paying half. Leo received a chaste kiss at her doorstep and flew off to the moon. Returning home, he knew with absolute certainty that no matter what difficulties they faced in the future, they would overcome them. He couldn't help but think that everything that happened was ultimately for the best. If Molly had remained faithful to him, he would not have met Elaine. Tuesday was a busy day for Molly. Not only was it her first day at her new job, but she needed to take the time to buy a new dress for her special date that evening and dress up. She had no problems finding a new job. In an interview, when asked why she was leaving her previous job, she answered without batting an eyelid that she felt empty and was looking for a new challenge. She gave Ben's phone number as a reference. Her good looks certainly helped, too. After a kind soul took the trouble to inform her that Leo had been spotted in the company of an out-of-this-world beauty at a romantic restaurant, she wasted no time in signing up for a paid dating site for academics. She was quite amazed at the number of responses she received in just one day. A short selection process left two promising candidates who not only seemed smart, but also looked great and were the right age. She was going to meet one guy tonight, and the other was reserved for tomorrow, just in case. The date exceeded all her expectations. He was smart, funny, attentive, had a promising career, and was very handsome. He, too, seemed fascinated by the enchanting beauty sitting in front of him. Their conversation went smoothly and covered many interesting topics. When they started discussing their hobbies, she asked him what kind of music he liked. He wisely replied that he had no particular preference in style. He said that he loved everything good and beautiful, including classical music. Molly raised an eyebrow and immediately rushed to break through. Like which one? You know, as usual, Beethoven, Mozart, Bach. The poor guy didn't know what he was getting into. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.